Hi, everyone. I'm going to walk you through the solution for problem 3 in chapter 5 on page 38 in my textbook. Um, as always, I've included a documentation page. I've deleted the extra blank sheets, and I've named and saved this file in my OneDrive. So we're provided with a list of transactions, and they are numbered, along with a product ID and an amount, a quantity amount for each transaction. So we are asked to return the product ID number that has the greatest amount. So before we begin, or as we begin, the first thing that we need to do is identify the maximum value in this column, in the amount column. So I'm going to name this column, and I'll name it amount. And you'll remember from very early in the course, we learned about the maximum function. So we're going to use that now. Max of the amount. And so sorry, I typed rather fast. So the formula is equals max, and the named range is amount. And it returns 4,979. So now we know what the maximum amount is. The next thing that we need to do is find out which transaction number that is. So we can do that, and we'll use a match formula to do that. So what is the value that we want to look up? And that value is what's contained in D2. So you can type D2 or you can click on D2. And of course, that's where our maximum value is saved. So where we want Excel to look up is in the amount column. And so if you click F3, it will bring up all your named ranges. The only one we have is amount. So I'll select that. And the match type that we're looking for is an exact match. So I select 0. Close the bracket. And that tells us that transaction number 177 contains this value, 4,979. Let's check. So I'm scrolling down to 177. Here we go, and it's correct. The other thing I'll note is that the description or the name that I'm looking for is looks like EQG. So make a note of that, because that's what we're going to expect our formula to return. So let's go back up to the top. There's a couple of different ways that we can return the ID code, and I'm going to walk you through 2 ways. First of all, we'll use a VLOOKUP just for fun practice, and then we'll use an index formula to return that. Okay, so let us first name the data range that contains the transaction, a product ID, and the amount. And I think I'll just call this lookup. Okay. So we'll start with a lookup. So a VLOOKUP. So the number that's, or the value that's contained in the column that is furthest to the left, and so by that I mean this column, is the transaction number. So that's the only number that we can use to look up unless we want to rearrange this table. Happily, I have the transaction number right here. Okay. And we'll look that up in our lookup. And the column number that we want to look up, let's remember back to how we name or how we number columns when we do VLOOKUPs. The first column is column 1, column 2, and column 3. So we want the product ID, so it's column 2. We are looking for an exact match, not an approximate match, so we'll type false. Okay, and that's the answer that we were expecting. Now, we can also use an index formula to return the same value. Let's do that now. I'm going to do it just below. So equals index. So now we're being asked, from where do you want this data pulled? And so we use the lookup table again. Okay, we want it pulled from the lookup. Which row number shall we look for? And in this case, the row number is the transaction number of 177. And which column number shall we look to? And exactly the same as when we did our VLOOKUP, we're looking for the second column, and that's the amount that's in the product ID. So we'll type 2. Okay, and we'll close the bracket. And it returns the same value. So both of these formulas work and are effective. So you can use a lookup formula, or you can use an index formula. This week, because we're looking at index and match, I would suggest using the index formula, but either one are acceptable. Okay, so that concludes this solution.